So this is my new project. I've bought a 17-foot 7-inch long cedar strip canoe, and it is built from a kit set that is sold by a company in Canada called Bear Mountain Boats. And in New Zealand this is particularly unusual because it would cost an enormous amount of money to freight the entire kit set for this boat over to New Zealand, especially since it's very likely that this boat was built somewhere just after the end of the 1980s. So it's quite possible that this boat is over 40 years of age, which makes it an antique. And it's also quite possible that it is one of a kind in New Zealand, due to the fact that it's very unlikely that anybody else would have paid that kind of money for the full kit set to bring this to New Zealand. Now, Bear Mountain Boats sell kit sets and they sell just the plans for the boats by themselves. So you might ask, how do I know that this was built from a kit set and that the guy who built it didn't just buy the plans and build it here? And the answer to that is that I very much believe that this boat is built from red cedar, and red cedar is not native to New Zealand. If somebody bought just the plans and then milled the red cedar here in New Zealand, that would have been an expensive task also. If they could have found this much red cedar in good condition in New Zealand in the mid to late 80s. So one of the most logical ways that red cedar would have got into New Zealand is that the builder bought the entire kit set. So this model is called the Redbird, and as I said, it's 17 foot 7 inches long. And for anybody who is not aware of what a cedar strip canoe is, they're basically built over a mold or form out of lots of strips of timber lined up one on top of the other until the hull of the boat is formed, and then they're covered in fiberglass, and then the fiberglass is sanded and varnished for UV protection. "17 foot 7 inches" is a particularly long canoe. Most people who paddle solo paddle in a 16 or 15 foot canoe, and usually a boat this long is designed for 2 or 3 paddlers. So all I know about its background is that the guy I bought it from bought it in Auckland, or from somebody in Auckland, which is northern New Zealand. The guy I bought it from lives down near Wellington on the Kapiti coast, and he used to paddle this in the ocean, and he had it for 10 years. So he bought it 10 years ago from somebody in Auckland. And I don't think he's probably done much work on it at all. Like, as you can see, a lot of the varnish has worn off, especially on the gunnels. And there are replacements that have been made of the thwarts. Like, that's just a rough piece of timber stuck in for one of the thwarts. Somebody had stuck a pad of a rubberized mat for kneeling on, and it's kind of funny because they didn't realize that the way to paddle a canoe solo was to sit in the front, back to front. He obviously had been sitting in the front seat, back to front. So this looks like the original yoke thwart. And it's unusual because it has no neck, no proper neck slot in it. You can see there's a bit of a skinny part there. But it's not at all traditional. So you can tell that this was not made by a professional canoe maker. It was made by an amateur home canoe maker because they were kind of guessing or just deciding on their own that they were going to do things a different way. You can also see that the in-wall has no scuppers, which is a little bit unusual. It's not completely unusual. Some people just don't build scuppers, which are holes that go along here so that when the boat is turned up, the water will drain out. So no scuppers. There were 2 seats. I've started dismantling them. The frames for the seats are kind of in reasonable condition, but obviously the cane disintegrated at some point and that seat no longer has any cane, and the other one is just really badly woven with nylon string. So it's had a rough life. Like the guy who I bought it off, he absolutely loved it. And as far as I know, he almost entirely paddled it in the ocean off the coast of Kapiti. And even though he loved it, he never really kept it in pristine condition. But one of the good things is there are no cracks, no splits, and absolutely no rot, which is unusual. But he kept this boat in an old container, so it was inside and not left outside to the weather, and I think that's basically what saved it. I think at some point somebody has added in these air tanks, air pockets in the front and the back. They don't look original because the fiberglass and resin around the edges looks rough, and it looks very different than the fiberglass and varnish of the hull. And you can see those kind of unusual sideways planks which must have just been left over wood to make the deck out of. That's unusual as well, which kind of shows that it might have been an amateur builder who put this together. I'm not going to keep those. I'm going to make a more traditional deck at the front and the back. Also, there are no rub strips on the front and back of any kind. There's never been a stick-on one, and there's never been a brass one, which is kind of the traditional thing for these boats, is to put brass rub strips on the back and the front. So the fiber, the finish is completely worn down through the fiberglass to the timber on both of the stems. So that's one of the major repairs to the hull that I'm going to have to do. The inside is in pretty good condition. There's no heavy dents or anything, but the varnish or the polyester has become very milky on the bottom and patchy. So pretty much the first thing that has to be done here, after I've taken the seats and that horrible rough piece of timber for the fort out, is to sand down the entire body of the boat, inside and out. Fiberglass the bits that need fiberglassing, and that's mainly, as I said, just the stems, and then revarnish or entire structure. And then I bought a whole bunch of brass fittings. And I'm probably going to rebuild the seats from scratch, for which I had bought some, I found some old Hart Rimu floorboards. Rimu is a native timber in New Zealand, and it was used extensively in the building of houses when they were still clearing the old forests in New Zealand. And it's a beautiful timber when it's finished, and it looks a lot like this red cedar, which is one of the reasons why I'm going to use it. So I'm going to use that Rimu to make new seats. I may use it to make new decks, or I may just veneer the decks, cut them back and then veneer them. And I think I'm going to probably replace that yoke with a proper yoke that fits around your neck. Yeah, so she's had a hard life and been treated a bit rough, but there's no serious damage to any of the timber at all, of the hull that is, or the gunnels. And that's the main thing. That means there's no problematic carpentry that needs to be done to the hull. That makes life a lot easier. So it's basically just reglassing some of the hull and revarnishing everything, and a ton of sanding, as is usually expected with projects like this. And fortunately my back room where I'm going to be doing all this is exactly 18 feet from corner to corner, so the boat just fits in here. So a great project. When she's sanded and refinished properly, she should look beautiful. And the shape of the hull is designed for speed. She has narrow aft and forward. She has a shallow depth, and I think she's 32 inches across at the widest point, amidships. at some point, whoever it is who's done a bit of mucking around with the boat has taken the original bolts for the seat out, or if they are the original ones, they're terrible because they're galvanized and they've oxidized quite a bit. But they've added an extra block or new blocks on the seat, mucking around with moving the seat up or down. Canoes are more stable the lower the seat is to the floor. But if you're like me and like a lot of people who paddle canoes, you want to be able to get your legs underneath the seat. So how low you can put the seat depends often on how easy it is to slide your legs underneath. And I will probably change the position of the front seat. There's not a lot of room here at the bow for the bow paddler, and if you're going to turn the boat round for a solo paddle, there's too much room between the yoke thwart and the seat, and it would be easier to lower the seat down and get your legs underneath if the seat was moved forward maybe another foot. So a bit of research due there about centre of gravity and the best position to put the seats. So that's my new project for the beginning of summer. I'm hoping she's all finished by the end of summer when I'm ready to take my next holiday.